Chapter 98 Brother. A knock at my door roused me from my sleep. Come in, I said in a deep groggy voice. Cherry's bouncy curls popped through the door. Are you decent? I looked down at my t-shirt that read cutie pie on it. Yes. She pushed the door open. She carried a dozen bags on each arm. 2 brothers followed her through carrying more. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. What's going on? Cherry gave me a cheery smile as she set the bags down on my bed. She turned to the men behind her. Just set them on the floor, boys. Thanks. They obeyed and she shooed them out with a hand. Girl time now, off you go. Girl time? I asked. She nodded solemnly. You are in desperate need of it. Here. She chucked a phone at me. It was a fancy smartphone with a touchscreen and everything. It's got a new number, so Creepo can't call you anymore. Thanks, but this is too much. There is no way I can afford this. I held up the phone and then waved around me. Let alone any of this. She rolled her eyes. Think of it as a gift from the Brotherhood. I frowned. Fine. What you do for them is like a job. You have worked more than enough in the last week to deserve this. This phone is like $1,000, I said. She shrugged. A little more, but what I'm trying to say is that your services are expensive. What you do for them is important. If you really want, I'll crunch the numbers for you, but in the end they will still owe you more. I don't think that's right. Do you know how much cocaine costs? I shook my head. About $60 a gram. That's $60 for a 20-minute high that gives you a nasty hangover and kills you over time. It's highly addictive and makes you make bad decisions. What you offer is clean and good for your health. She eyed me to make sure I was listening before she continued. So let's say we value you at the same as a hit of cocaine. That's $60 a person. How many did you touch last night? I tried to count in my head. I don't know, maybe 20 people? Try 42, and that was only the people I counted that came up to the tent last night. Not the ones you did at the bar while you were eating. So, that 42 times 60 in just one night. That's more than $2,500. In one night. You've been here a week. I've seen you touch each brother at least once. There are 104 members. So you've made at least $6,000 already. That's not to mention all the walk-ins we get. Seem fair yet? I looked at the bags on the floor. And how much did you spend on all this? Only $3,000. She nodded to the phone. $4,000. I just don't think I'm comfortable with selling myself as a drug. Cherry shook her head in exasperation. It's a service. Just shut up and take the stuff. I'll track it for you and put it in the books. You'll see. You deserve this. You just need to get over yourself. The bar is going to fail if you don't step up. Oh, you mean like tonight? She nodded. We charge $200 a hit. You mean a touch? That's right. And you need to scream sex. If you don't do this, the bar is going under. You saw our numbers. I wrinkled my nose at her. She narrowed her eyes at me, then opened up a bag and pulled a black dress. Now put this on. My brow furrowed. Isn't that a little formal? You are a woman in power. You need to look the part. Traipsing around in your Converse and holy jeans is not going to instill faith in the people. You are leading an entire faction. You need to dress like it. You don't happen to have anything in leather, do you? She grinned. As a matter of fact. She pulled a bag on the floor closer to her, then threw a pair of leather pants at me. I could feel the Lanie inside of me get excited. Kira was cringing thinking about how uncomfortable they would be. I pushed that aside. I had to stop thinking like 2 different people. I was one person. Just one. One nameless piece of shit. I lifted my eyes from the pants with a big smile on my face. What else did you get? Keris mile matket mine. We spent the next 2 hours going through her haul. Cherry had impeccable taste. She seemed to have a good sense of me too, because everything she picked out was something I would have stopped in the store and drooled over. I would never have bought it because it was impractical, but I would have certainly looked at it. She dressed me up in preparation for that Saturday night. She said they were always big nights and it was important I put on a good show. She stood behind me in the bathroom, curling my hair into long ringlets. There was a good chance it was going to just go flat. My hair never held a curl, but she just winked at me. Maybe I was just never good with hair. She did my makeup and left so she could get ready. I looked at myself in the mirror. I wore a tight black dress with a new bra that made my small bosom pop. The neckline plunged down the center of it. It hugged my body, showing off curves I didn't even know I had. Kira had always been a beanpole, and Lanie was muscle on muscle, but when combined I felt like I was just a normal girl. Well, I guess a woman now. This dress made me look all grown up. I was tall enough and adequately built. Not really too much of anything. A perfect plain Jane. The dress fell to my knees and flowed lower in the back. I wore a pair of black high heels that buckled around my ankles. Long sparkling earring hung at my ears behind the large waves of hair. My makeup was dark and sharp but not overdone. Instead of hiding my eye like most nightclub makeup did, it accentuated it, making my blue eyes pop in a grayish color. I held my forearms out. The Aurora and Night Sword were tattooed on my inner forearms. Move, I commanded. The tattoos zipped up my arms and down to my outer thighs. I thought about putting them on my ribs so they would be entirely out of view, but I wanted the option to protect myself if needed. I walked down the stairs very carefully. I wasn't used to heels, but I used a bit of magic to help me balance. All I needed right now was a vertigo attack and I would be down for the count. Anton sat watching TV. I stopped behind the couch. The sunset lit up the sky through the windows, casting a pink and purple glow on the clouds. How can you watch that idiot box when there is such a lovely view outside? I asked. He nearly wet himself, he jumped so bad. Holy hell. Where'd you come from? Anton caught his chest as he leaned over and back to look at me. You know I live here, right? You look nice. Thanks. Seriously though, figure out something with your life, or I will kick you out on the street. You wouldn't do that to me. Not to you, dearly departed best friend's brother. He feigned crying. He gave me big pouty lips and puppy dog eyes. Dude, I'm your sister. Matej was my father too. I think the shock made him catatonic. He didn't even blink. He just stared. I waited a full minute. Anton. Sister? That is so awesome. No. Stop. Why is that awesome to you? Well, now you can't kick me out. See, I thought I was inheriting all this and then I found out you are some leader or something, but now you're family. You can't kick me out. You wouldn't do that to your own family. You're just too nice. I glowered at him. I left my family, remember? I didn't talk to them for years. I will kick you out if you don't do something with your life. I will have the brothers throw you out on your ass. Go to school. Get a job. Find something to do that isn't drugs and girls. Get a damn life. I reached down and hit the power button on the remote. I'm serious, Anton. You are wasting away on this couch. Figure yourself out or I will force you to. He crossed his arms. Why couldn't you have been the sister that died? I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't punch him. Well, I shouldn't punch him. That would not help the situation. It would make me feel better. I slapped him in the back of the head. Do you hear me? Anton grabbed his head. All right. I hear you. Damn it. Bitch. He rubbed his head. Good. I walked over to the kitchen. My heels tapped the floor with each step. He stared at me. You're really my sister? Yes. He gave me a funny look. What? You're too hot to be my sister. Yeah, well, you're too skinny to be my brother. Stay off the drugs. They're no good. You always have a response, don't you? I stared at him. See? Even that. Everything about you is just so damn irritating. Good. Get a job. He stuck his tongue out at me and then disappeared up the stairs. I watched him the whole way to his bedroom from the open hallway. He didn't look back. He slammed the door. Damn teenager, I muttered. I raised my voice and shouted at him. You're older than me. You know that, right? Start acting like it. I rifled through the cupboards and fridge, looking for something to eat. It was fully stocked. Nothing was past its expiration date. It felt like I was living in the Twilight Zone. I went with something simple. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I didn't want to get into a fully cooked meal, and there weren't any frozen meals so that I could get down there. I didn't really want to eat any more fried food. It made me feel slow. I devoured the sandwich as I watched the last of the sunlight disappear from the clouds. It was 8 o'clock, time to meet my new Saturday. Chapter 99 Work. I clicked down the steps of the stairs past the garage all the way to the hall behind the bar. I could hear the music thrumming through the walls. Tonight it was more like rave music. I guess bars had to change it up to draw different clientele every night. I slipped past the bathroom to the other end. The hall opened up next to the bar counter. Cherry turned and gave me a nod when she saw me. I smiled and waved. Everything inside of me wanted to duck my head and hide in a booth, but I couldn't do that. I had to be the face of the faction. I had to be the new face of the Ardor brothers. I had to fight a grimace. This was a lot of responsibility. It was only 8, but the bar already had an excellent turnout. Not too many of them were brothers, or at least not many of them were wearing their jackets. It was going to take me forever to learn all of their names and faces. The bodies jumped up and down on the dance floor to the electronic rave-like music. I didn't recognize anyone just yet. I took a few tentative steps forward into the bar. I needed to appear brave even though I wanted to hide. A few heads turned my direction. I felt eyes lingering on me. That was what I wanted, right? To attract attention. To command attention, that was it. Cherry poured me a drink. It looked like a vodka cranberry. She pushed it towards me with a wink, then nodded out to the bar itself. I wrinkled my nose at her. She pointed sharply and raised her eyebrows. I gave her a salute. She rolled her eyes at me and went back to serving patrons. I took a long sip of the drink and started wandering through the bar. A lot of eyes turned my way, but no one interacted with me. I got a lot of nods and a few winks, but not from anyone I knew. After a pass around the edge of the dance floor, I headed up the stairs. I felt like I was luring people up to my lair. Hell, I probably was. I was like a walking billboard for an orgasm. That was my power after all. As Cherry explained to me, I was their highest income. I took the stairs to the upper level one at a time. I made eye contact with the people coming down. A few of them hesitated on the steps as I walked by. I finally made it to the top. I passed booths of people. I walked slowly, giving them a little smile, then continuing. Hopefully it was enough to get their attention. I stood in front of the black curtains. Two Arter brothers stood outside. I think their names were Fraser and Amon, a giant and a part human. They smiled at me as they opened the curtains. I touched each of their hands as I walked by, pulling just a little bit of energy. Their faces went slack with pleasure. I slipped into the room. The weird chaise-like bedchair was made up with pillows. The table held numerous bottles of alcohol with clean glasses and an ice bucket. There were a few bowls of chips, candies, and a nice steaming basket of tater tots. I sat on the chaise. I didn't want the tater tots to go to waste, so I started popping them into my mouth with gobs of ketchup on them. It was like Cherry could read my mind.
I pausa mittate tot.
Maybe she could. Hell. I continued chewing. I'm glad she was on my side. My first client walked in. I don't think he was a brother. Amon directed him to an armchair across the table from me. He pointed to his hand and then to the table. The man complied by setting his hand on the table. I reached out with my free hand while the other kept popping tots into my mouth. He gave me a funny look, but as soon as I pulled energy from him, his eyes closed. See, this wasn't such a bad gig. I ate junk food and made money. It was way better than that stupid grocery store job. If what Cherry was saying was right, I'd be making more money in a week here than I did in a month there. Maybe more in just one night. I didn't need all that money though. I'd have to make sure what I was getting paid was fair so that bar would still stay in business, and the Arter brothers still could provide protection to the territory. I realized I was like a queen. They certainly treated me like one. I just needed to live up to the task. The man finished. I released my hold on him. Next, I called. No one responded. I wondered if they couldn't hear me over the music. I went to stand up, but my toe hit a basket at my feet. It was full of crystals. None of them glowed. I could totally dump energy into those. I could probably even sell it too. Whoa. No wonder Matei had so much money. I should have let him pay for my college when he offered. I managed to stand up. I pulled the curtain aside and came face to face with a solid chest. My eyes rose to see Liam staring down at me. He didn't say anything. He just blocked the entrance and stared. After a long moment, I pressed my hand against his chest. I could feel it cold beneath his tight shirt. My hand slid across his pectorals until I reached his bare arm. He still didn't move or say anything. I pulled a little energy from him and watched his face. He remained stoic. I narrowed my eyes at him and pulled more energy. I could see him fighting against the pleasure. I pulled just a little more. His eyes finally flickered close. My hand ran down his arm to his hand. I stopped the pull and led him to the chaise. He followed me, sitting easily when I directed him. Are you mad at me? I asked. He grumbled something I couldn't make out. Two men and a woman entered my lair. Amon directed them to sit. They picked a love seat, but all three of them sat in it. They chatted among themselves excitedly, but I couldn't make out their words. I smiled half-heartedly at them. I leaned across the table and touched their hands. This time when I pulled, the men started kissing the woman. She grabbed my hand, so I was touching all three of them at once. Oh, I saw where this was going. Oh my. Do I look away? Do I watch? I certainly wasn't going to join them. I looked back over my shoulder at Liam. He looked at me askance, then looked off at the dance floor. I guess this was why he was here, to make sure the clients didn't drag me into their threesome. They were pulling at me. I leaned across the table a bit more. I'm sure my butt was a nice view for Liam. I looked back at him again. He was still staring off in the distance. He really must be pissed at me. It was probably for getting those orc women off. I really didn't have much of a choice. or having sex with a human made him look weak in the eyes of orcs. I was probably messing up his credibility as a leader. I should probably just leave him alone. The three hands tugged at me. I think they wanted me to join in, but I held firm to the table. I kept my eyes glued to a spot on the table. I could hear plenty of noises from them. I just needed to make them finish so I could get out of this very awkward situation. How many more of these was I going to have tonight? Their moaning grew to a climax. I pulled a huge amount of energy at once, setting them off. I disentangled my hand and slowly retreated back across the table. Liam handed me an empty crystal, but he didn't look at me. I filled the crystal with their energy. I snacked on some chips while I waited for them to come back down to earth. They were escorted out by Fraser, who almost dragged them away, but in a very diplomatic bouncer-like way. One of the men smiled at me lecherously. His eyes snapped to Liam and then straight ahead. I looked over at Liam with my eyebrow raised. He frowned, then looked off in the distance. The next two clients came through, 2 women this time. They sat on the love seat and started making out. I gave them a tight smile. This was going to be a long night. Chapter 101 Archer. Liam's eyes lifted to the curtain. He stood abruptly. I straightened, following his gaze. A man in a black suit and a fedora walked in. 2 tall men followed him. They all had slightly pointed ears. Liam stepped forward and shook his hand. Don Archer, Liam said with a respectful nod. Brother Baxter. I have urgent business with you. Do you mind clearing the room? Archer looked down at me briefly and back to Liam. This is Brother Popov's daughter. She will be taking over the Arter brothers. Archer frowned. It is unfortunate to hear you will be stepping down. I feel we have created a strong relationship between our 2 factions. She will fully support our agreement. If you choose to speak with me on the matter, I will act as her liaison. I blinked. I was surprised at how diplomatic Liam sounded. He never talked like that in front of the brothers or sisters. He kept his words short and grumbly, but here he sounded like a true leader. I sat up on the chaise with my back straight and tried to look like I knew what I was doing. I totally didn't. I crossed my legs tightly. My lack of underwear wasn't making me feel very leader-like. Archer looked me over again. Until she can prove herself, I think it's best if you and I speak together. That is acceptable, but she does not leave my side. She will be here for our entire conversation. Archer nodded. He took a seat across the table. The 2 tall men following him stood behind the armchair. I could feel their eyes on me. I focused enough to see their auras. All 3 of them blazed with strong magic. Don Archer whirled around him. I had a feeling if I made a sudden move it would be my last. Brother Baxter, there have been numerous attacks on your territory. This, as you know, makes us vulnerable. If our allies can't keep the peace, then we look weak. We have been in some tussles with the Grange. They abducted one of our sisters. She escaped. I think they are upset. Escaped? You didn't do a full frontal attack and burn their headquarters to the ground. A low growl escaped Liam. He cleared his throat. If we knew where their headquarters were, it is possible that we could have eliminated a problem for both of us. I see. So she escaped. The Grange is attacking you because... He tapped his fingers together. They want her back. Liam remained silent. He didn't move a single muscle. Archer leaned forward. Maybe because you're an orc you don't get my meaning. Peace is very important. We cannot be allies with a faction in the middle of a war. Liam's fists balled at his sides. We will not give her back. I set my hand on Liam's closest fist. I wanted to comfort him, to give him maybe a bit of my power, but I didn't want to compromise his ability to think. Hopefully my insignificant touch was enough. Archer leaned back in the chair. I see. His eyes landed on me. What's so special about you, daughter of Mate? Do you have the same bewitching skill as your father? Are you their new drug and now that makes you think you can be their leader? Do you have them all wrapped around your little finger here, just like Liam? I stared at him a moment, then looked to Liam. Liam was practically fuming. I could feel the muscles in his hands tensing. If I didn't do something soon, Liam was going to break something or someone. I looked back over to Don Archer. Both his men were gearing up with some bright power around themselves. I took in a deep breath. Either we were going to fight our way out of this and lose some allies, or I need to impress this bozo. That may be true. I leaned forward. Would you like a taste? Archer waved his hand in front of him, warding me off. I do not have time for party tricks. I've seen succubus before, sweetie. One's way hotter and with way more skill than you can acquire at your young age. You don't have any real power, which means the Grange will crush you. He leaned forward and whispered, if I don't first. I set my hand on the box of crystals under the table below where they could see. I sucked the power back inside of me. It vibrated. I was brimming with it. I felt like even the words I would speak would be saturated with it. What do I need to do to convince you? I asked. I want to see something truly formidable. The only thing you have to protect you are these dumb brutes that follow you like slaves. He gestured to Liam. I want to see what you can do for me. I won't do anything for you, I said. I will protect my faction, even if that means going to war with you. Archer laughed. Tough words from such a little girl. He looked up to the men behind him. I like her. She makes me laugh. Keep her alive. Take out the rest. Something in me snapped. I could feel all the power inside me energize, but it was stronger than before. It felt like the pink god power again. It snapped to my fingers and did my bidding without commands. The pink wings materialized and fluttered. I rose above the chaise, looking down at Archer. His eyes lifted as I rose above the table. Liam's eyes widened slightly, but he stood at my side and glowered down at him. I opened up my left palm and flicked my fingers at him. Pink stands of energy snapped out and connected to him. I moved him like a puppet, like how Mr. Klein had done to me. I wiggled my fingers and made him stand. He turned to his goons and slapped them in the face. A look of shock replaced their stoic expressions. The men tensed. They realized what I had done. They held their hands out at me. Chairs started flying at me. I didn't flinch. I had so much power and it was right there at my fingertips. I held my right hand and blocked each attack with a wall of pink sparkly magic. The chairs bounced off and flew across the room. I shielded Liam from a flying table and a few patrons from a lamp that had bounced off my shield. The wind picked up, cycling around me, pulling the curtains down. It fluttered my dress. I briefly worried if my bits were showing, but I pushed that thought aside. Eyes all around the upper level and even from the dance floor watched our standoff. The wind pushed furniture around me, but my shield blocked it. Even my wings didn't falter. I used my puppet strings to clamp Archer's hands around his goonies' throats. Archer raised his voice. Enough. Aiden, Aaron, stop. Enough. Young miss, please. You've made your point. The wind died down. I released my control on Archer. The chairs, tables, and curtains returned to their original positions like nothing had ever happened. Archer turned and eyed me suspiciously. I lowered to the floor and cut the power of my wings off with a flick. I sat on the chaise and crossed my legs. Liam still stood at my side. Archer sat again. Well, you certainly are more powerful than Matei, or at least you have a few more tricks. I just glared at him. I think we'd like to renew our contract now that there is a new leader of the Ardor faction. He pulled a paper from out of the air. With one hand he waved it over the paper. Words wrote themselves on the paper. He slid it across the table to me. Liam snatched it off the table and read it over. He laid it back down with the signature page exposed, then bent to my ear. It's an honest contract. I nodded. Deal? Archer asked. I nodded again. He smiled. A knife appeared in his hand. He sliced his finger open. It dripped on the paper and formed his signature. He offered me the knife. I flicked my hand out. Reveal, I whispered. The tattoo of the Aurora sword in its dagger form slid up my leg and torso, then down my arm. It materialized in my hand. I sliced my finger and dripped the blood on the page. The blood turned into a pair of pink wings with a black and white sword crisscrossed through them. I'm glad we have a deal. We will send reinforcements to your territory's edge to keep the Grange at bay. Archer stood. It is nice to have met you. You know, I didn't get your name. I stood. That's too bad. I held my hand out to him. He shook it. A small smile played at his lips. I could feel his magic tingling up my arm. I wasn't sure what he was trying to do, but I didn't like it. I blocked it with my magic, forming a wall with my aura. His smile grew. Have a nice evening. He turned and left through the curtains with his goons. Chapter 102 Leader. I plopped down on the chaise and threw a few pieces of candy in my mouth. What's his faction's name? Liam pushed the table aside and dropped to one knee in front of me. His head bowed. Liam? I asked. Beloved. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. For what? The way I treated you. I'm so sorry. Beloved, I'm sorry I called you Kira. I'm sorry. I bit my lip. I realized he was afraid of me. He'd seen my power and that had changed how he saw me. I reached out and set my hand on his jaw. His skin was cold to the touch again. Liam. I am the same person I was 10 minutes ago. If you're mad at me for something I did, call me Kira. I don't care. But what I did just now was to protect us and the Brotherhood. Please don't let that change how you see me. He kept his head bowed. The sight was starting to sicken me. I shouldn't have shown my power. I didn't even know I could control that god power. I've been having so much trouble with it. Why now? Why'd it work now of all times? Please, Liam. Get up. Be grumpy. Growl. I hate to see you like this. You're not my slave like that Dick said. None of you are. We're brothers and sisters, right? We respect each other. I slid down on the floor to my knees and wrapped my arms around his thick neck. Please. I whispered in his ear. Beloved, it's not that simple. You aren't just a figurehead. You actually have power. I didn't know you could do those things. I usually can't. That guy just pissed me off. Before though, when we were trying to kill you, why didn't you use them then? Well, they don't always work. They just seem to tonight. Liam kept his head down. I pressed kisses to his cheek. Please stop this. Please get up. I hate seeing you like this. Liam turned his cheek away from me. Liam, please. I'm no different, really. Please. I begged. He kept his face away from me and pointed down. My arms dropped from around his neck. Beloved. A male voice came from behind me. I turned to see Fraser with his head through the curtain. Yes. I answered. There's a situation. I picked myself up off the floor. I gave one more look at Liam, who was still kneeling behind me, then faced the curtain. Okay, let's handle it. Fraser disappeared. A moment later, a girl was pushed through the curtain. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her face was bloodied. Her clothes were torn. Her gray eyes were frantic, but as soon as she saw me, she froze. Liam stood behind me. I could feel him hovering protectively. An orc walked through. This one's name was Jamie, if I remembered correctly. What happened to her? I asked. I looked over her dark wavy hair. There was something about her that was familiar. Beloved. Jamie greeted with me a tip of his head. We were protecting our territory on the north side. The Grange was transporting this woman. She was like this when we got there. We did not harm her. She was tied and gagged. We removed the gag. She says her name is Kezia Gray. Really? I turned to her. She nodded. I looked over her dark hair. Her cheekbones were similar to mine. She looked a lot like Isabel. Could this be another sister? Do you know why the Grange wants you? I asked. She shook her head. She looked on the verge of tears.
I gæstert forhertog sit.
I gave Jamie a look and he untied her hands. She sat on the edge of the armchair rubbing at her wrists. I sat in another armchair and faced her. Can you tell me what happened? I was sleeping in my apartment. Her voice was small and scared. Her eyes darted about the room to each of the orcs. Then she quickly looked back to me. She continued in a whisper. It was 1 a.m. when someone starts banging on my door. I live in a studio apartment. They were shining lights in the windows even though the curtains were closed. They kept banging and banging. She covered her ears as if she heard it all over again. Then what happened? I asked softly. Then they burst through the door. They pinned me to the bed and tied me up. They put a bag over my head. Tears slid down her cheeks. How'd you get hurt? I pointed to blood on her face. She covered her mouth. I wouldn't stop screaming. I couldn't help it. She dropped her hands. It made them mad. They hit me. It hurt so much. I don't remember a lot after that. I was in a car. Did they say anything? Any names? Any reason why they wanted you? She looked down while she shook her head. More tears streamed down her face. Liam passed me a box of tissues. I held one out to her. She took it and wiped it down her face without really paying attention. She just stared at a spot near my knee. Another person entered the curtain. It was the man with the fox ears and the pink skin. His name was Edwin, I thought. He bowed his head to me in greeting. I gestured to Kezia and he nodded. He kneeled in front of her. Kezia Gray, I'm going to check your identity. Is that okay? She nodded absently. He held up the palm of his hand to her. She slowly met it with her hand. I focused on watching his green energy search her. I could almost feel it in the air now. It was strange, like my senses were more attuned to it. When he finished, he broke contact and stood up. He looked at me, then tilted his head in the direction of the curtain. I took Kezia's hand in mine. This is my friend Liam. He's in charge around here. He's going to keep you company for a minute. I'll be right back. I released her hand and stood up. Liam took my place in the armchair, careful not to look at me. I sighed inwardly and left the curtain. Edwin was waiting for me on the other side. Well? Is she my sister? I asked. Edwin shook his head.
No.
He held his palm out to me. May I? I nodded and held out my palm. He pressed his hand to mine, then closed his eyes. You share a maternal bloodline that goes back, I'd say, 2 generations? We share a grandmother? He opened his eyes. That is correct. She is your cousin on your mother's side. Your mother's brother's daughter, if I'm not mistaken. And your magic is accurate? He nodded curtly. I smiled. Thank you. I reached out and brushed his hand, pulling a bit of energy from him. He closed his eyes. Thank you, beloved. He eased down in a chair while I continued to pull energy from him. I wasn't even really thinking about it. My mind was still mulling over the fact that I had a grandmother on my mother's side and cousins. The thought of family set my stomach swirling. Whenever I thought of family, I imagined fighting with my dad and brother. We were always at each other's throats. We'd shout and fight, mostly about what was good for me. And look where that had gotten me. Edwin started moaning. I eased back the pull. I hadn't realized I was taking so much. I did feel rather drained after that last battle. I had emptied every crystal I had filled tonight. I let Edwin finish before I headed back in the lair. Amon nodded at me. I brushed his hand in Fraser's as I walked by, pulling a bit of energy as I went. I would make sure to treat them for being such good guards. Liam sat awkwardly across from Kezia as she sobbed in her hands. He tried to reach out and comfort her but then stopped before he touched her. His hand landed on his leg, and he pulled at his jeans in pinching motions, trying to give his hand something to do. I set my hand on his shoulder. He tensed at my touch. My heart sank. How was I going to fix things between us? I focused back on the scared woman in front of us. Kezia, my name is Lanie Gray. I'm your cousin. It's nice to meet you. I held my hand out to her. She wiped at her tears with the soaked tissue and gave me a floppy sort of handshake. She had no strength in her hand, poor thing. I released her hand. You can stay here tonight. I'll make sure you stay safe. Would that be okay? She nodded. I'll have someone look after you. Would that be okay? She nodded again. I squeezed Liam's shoulder and bent to his ear. Can you find someone to look after her? He nodded and stood a little too quickly. He seemed grateful to get out of this situation. In 3 strides he disappeared through the curtain. A few minutes later, he returned with Eileen, a halfman. I wasn't sure what his other half was, but he looked human. He smiled at me and gave a nod. He knelt next to Kezia and whispered to her. He took her hand and escorted her out. Thank you, I said to Liam. He nodded and kept his head bowed. You didn't want to take care of her yourself? I asked. His brow furrowed. I have vowed to protect you, beloved. I will not leave your side. My mouth drew down in a frown. Liam, please, I whispered. You should be getting to bed, beloved. It is getting late. He gestured toward the curtain. I sighed and led the way out. Chapter 103, The Greys. I woke up in my big bed alone. Liam was asleep in the reclining chair at the corner of the room. I shuffled out of bed. The clock read 12:03. A part of me felt bad for sleeping in like I'd wasted the day, but I had only slept 6 hours. It was the curse of having a night job. I showered. When I came back into the room, Liam was gone. I looked through the dresser drawers of new clothes. I struggled with just choosing jeans and a t-shirt, but I needed to dress like a professional. Was the leader of a faction considered a professional? What would that kind of person wear to impress? Probably lots of leather. It was a biker gang after all. I could feel the Lanie side of me all excited to dress from head to toe in leather, and jump on one of the bikes and drive around being a badass, but the Kira side of me was freaking out. She'd never worn a strip of leather in her life other than cowboy boots. I breathed. Okay, I was one person. Just one. I was me. I was still nameless. I sighed. I lifted my chin. I just needed to pick one. Any name. That could be no one. I was no one. Okay, so I couldn't choose a name. So what? I could pick clothes. I could be a new person with new clothes. I just needed to decide. It was such a small thing, not like picking a name. I could try them on and change them. It wasn't permanent like a name. I reached out and grabbed the leather pants. Was I skinny enough for these? I slid them on one leg at a time and buttoned them. My mouth drew down in a frown. I could see why only really skinny chicks wore these. They showed every part. I needed to hit the gym more. I'd been trying, but between Kira's work schedule and Lanie's imprisonment, it was still a struggle to get in shape. I peeled the leather pants off. Okay, so that wasn't the new me, not yet anyway. I reached out for a pair of jeans. At least these fit properly. I picked a navy blue top with quarter sleeves and a V neckline. It hugged my sides, and the decoration of the front hid any little bits that weren't perfect yet. I looked at myself in the mirror. Okay, I felt okay with this. I added a short leather boot that fit nicely under the bootcut jeans. I added a bit of makeup, not too much, just some eyeliner and mascara. I pulled my hair back in a ponytail. Okay, I felt good. I felt put together and a little fancy, but not over the top. This was all right. This was a good start to a new me without being totally uncomfortable. I walked downstairs. Anton saw me and jumped off the couch. I gave him a skeptical look. He started shuffling around in the cupboards. Good morning, I said slowly, eyeing the mess he was making. What are you doing? I was thinking about what you were saying. I'm going to make you breakfast. I gave him a tight smile. Okay. Do you even know how to cook? It's never too late to learn a new skill. He pulled over an already opened cookbook on the counter and started dumping ingredients into a bowl. You know, all the dry ingredients goes in separate from the wet. He nodded. I've been watching cooking shows. I've got this. I really hope so. I didn't really want to be a test subject for a weird cooking experiment. I looked around. I guess I didn't have much else to do today. I would just be doing the same as him, trying to find a way to be useful. Kezia came wandering down the stairs. She looked scared with big eyes and little steps. Eileen followed behind her, all muscle and easy movements. She looked between me and the door. Good morning, please join us. My brother was just going to make some breakfast, I said. She hesitated, looking at the door for a moment, then shuffled toward me. She joined me at the high counter. Together we watched Anton mix pancake batter. Does he know what he's doing? She whispered. I leaned towards her. If he messes this up, we can go downstairs. They might make us something edible. A light laugh bubbled from her. She eased back in the bar chair. Eileen stood behind us at a distance. I turned to him. Eileen, come join us. You can partake in this experiment too. Eileen nodded and stepped forward. He took a seat on the other side of Kezia. The door to the apartment opened. Liam walked through. He saw me at the counter and bowed his head. Beloved, good morning. Good morning, join us. Anton was making pancakes, I said. I shouldn't, beloved. Liam, join us. He nodded and stood at my side. We watched Anton pour the batter on the griddle. That one's done, Kezia said. See the bubbles, they have all popped. Anton flipped it over. To everyone's surprise, it was a perfect brown. Well, it looks like we might actually get a real breakfast. I slipped out of the chair and started setting the large round table under the central light. Liam joined me, and before too long, we were all sitting around the table with a pile of perfect-looking pancakes. I sliced into mine. It was good. I was surprised. Wow, Anton. You might have a future as a chef after all, I said. Help is needed in the kitchen. I am sure Graham would train you, Liam said. Really? Anton asked. Liam nodded. Anton looked over at me. Okay, yeah, I'd like that. I frowned. I'm not sure if making pancakes once gives you a good resume for being a cook. I can wash dishes. I'll start anywhere. Just don't kick me out, please, Kira, Anton begged. I think washing dishes is a good place to start, I said. Kezia looked over at me. Kira. I thought your name was Lanie. I sighed. It is. I'm both. I used to be Kira and I used to be Lanie. I thought we were twins and then I clapped my hands together. Then I was just one person. Kind of a Curie. Lania sandwich. How is that possible? Magic. She laughed nervously. No, really, how? I looked at her seriously. Magic, really? Wait, can you not see? I turned to Liam. What does he look like? She glanced at him and then looked down at her plate. What? What do you mean? Describe to me what Liam looks like, I said. Okay. He's got brown hair. It's medium length. And a goatee. He's really tall, like 6.5 feet. 6'8", he grumbled. So she's outside of the veil, I stated. Wait. I leaned forward. Is he handsome? I waggled my eyebrows at her. She turned red and looked down at her hands. Yes, of course. I smirked and looked over at Liam. I told you. Liam's eyes narrowed at me. I reached under the table and set my hand on his knee. He froze. Damn. He was still weirded out by my magic. I removed my hand. What's the veil? Kezia asked. I waved my hand. It's okay. Don't worry. So you're not a witch? A witch? She laughed. No, wait, are you being serious? I nodded. Was your mother a witch? Or your father? She shook her head furiously.
No, no.
Not at all. What a silly question. My mom was a dentist and my dad was a nurse. Was. They are both dead. They died in a car accident about 6 years ago. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. A witch? Liam asked lowly. Is that what you are? I shook my head. No, my mother was. At least I think she was. If she was a witch, then you. I waved him off. Shoo. I turned back to Kezia. If your last name is Gray, then your father was a Gray? She nodded. And he's dead. Okay, so his mother is your grandmother and my grandmother. Did you ever hear of an Aunt Isabel? She shook her head. Never. I frowned. She looked just like her. She looked way more like her daughter than I did. I almost felt a pang of jealousy, but I would never wish the pain my mother inflicted on me on anyone. Okay. I tapped my fingers together. So, the only thing we have to go on is that you are related to me by blood. All the possibilities went through my mind. I didn't dare voice them. She looked scared enough. I turned to Eileen. Will you keep Kezia company? She will be staying with us for a while. I turned to her. Is that okay with you? We'll keep you safe. She shrugged. I guess so. I leaned forward. Do you have any other family members? Any others related to the Gray name? She nodded. Yes, I have several cousins, some aunts and uncles too. They are all spread out. I haven't seen them in a long time. I have no idea where they are. Okay. Okay. I stood. All right, Kezia. Just relax. Think of this as a vacation. Don't worry. I'll figure out what's going on. You can return to your life soon. She frowned. Okay. Good. I'll see you later. Just take it easy. I turned and left the apartment. Liam followed me down the stairs. He stopped me before I reached the garage. What is going on? I think the darkness is planning something. They couldn't get me, so they got her. It has something to do with the Gray line. What are you talking about? Liam asked. Are you a witch? Do you have witch blood? I looked up at him. I honestly don't know. What I do know is that I need to figure out what is going on before they find Kezia or me. But Kira, witch blood? That's serious. If people know about you, they will be coming for you. Everyone will be coming after you. I patted him on the leather jacket. Liam, please. Let's just handle the Grange first. Then we can worry about everyone else. He frowned. It's okay. I will protect the Brotherhood. I will protect Kezia. Just let me think about this. I straightened his jacket and turned away, leaving him on the stairs looking at me as I walked. Chapter 104, Witch Blood. I stepped into the hallway of the bar, then entered the office room. I had just sat in the chair when Cherry popped her head in. Hey boss, she said. Hey. Why does Liam look so pissed? I shrugged. Well, he's pacing outside your door looking like he's going to rip someone's head off. I sighed. I think it has something to do about witch blood. She sat in the leather armchair across the desk and set her chin in her hands. Ooh, who has witch blood? The new girl? Is she awesome? I grimaced. No, wait. You have witch blood? What? So cool. Shh. Not so loud. I know, but it's super rare. Like, most witches die as children because they are so sought after. How do you live this long? Is it the twin thing? I rubbed my face with my hands. I really don't like it when you read my mind. What? I don't read minds. Her eyes flickered to the ceiling. She totally read minds or something of the sort. Well, then I don't have witch blood. She eyed me skeptically. What can you do with it? I mean, witches that live long enough to actually use their power can do just about anything they put their mind to, but what can you do? I can't do anything. I'm not a witch. I'm just a little succubus that's pretending to be the leader of a faction. Right? Okay, I believe you. She said it like she was going to play along with my lie. She stood and came around the desk. I swiveled the chair to watch her. So, just in case you wanted to know more about them, Matei used to keep a secret stash of magic books. She tipped a book on the shelf behind me. The bookcase swung in. Stairs descended into the dark. Whoa! I stood and crowded in behind her to look. He had a habit of collecting all things witchy for a long time. I think witches scared him more than anything else. I'm not surprised. I thought back to the memory of my mother and Matei when she was pregnant. She stole his power. He must have found a way to get it back. Otherwise, he would have lost his position a long time ago. Want to take the tour? Cherry asked. Definitely. I followed her down the staircase. She flipped a light on. The metal stairs echoed under my feet with every step. When we reached the bottom, I looked out into the soft yellow-orange light. The walls were lined with bookshelves full of dusty old tomes. Comfortable chairs and a table dotted the library. There was a small fridge and a microwave in the corner. It seemed Matei had spent a lot of time down here. Do you know what he was looking for? I asked. I think he wanted to become a witch. Do you think he was successful? She shook her head. As far as I can tell, you need to be born with witch blood to do it. Otherwise, you can only do basic spells and warding. Well, and use whatever power you are born with. But witches have the ability to transform any magic into what they want. That makes sense, actually. You took the energy from the brothers and changed it to heal them. People can't do that. I turned to her. Do you think they suspect me? She shook her head. I don't think anyone has put it together yet, well, except Liam. He's looking really worried. Now I can see why. Well, I don't see why. I ran my finger across the dusty table. You really are new to this world. As I said, witches don't make it past childhood. When they do, they usually do some really nasty things. People hunt them down and kill them. Otherwise, they take over multiple factions. People practically worship them. When was the last one? One pops up every 10 years or so. You hear about them taking over entire states and in Europe whole countries. Actually, I think a few of them are still in power over there. We've been cut off from that magical community for a long time. The last one I heard of close by here was in Utah. 4 states full of factions were following this woman. I don't know how it ended, but she just up and vanished. The factions were in chaos for years. I feel like they finally just settled down. I slid heavily into a chair at the table. That sounded a lot like Isabel. I knew what happened to her. Juno took her out because of me. I could see why people would come after someone like that. That was way too much power for one person. Are you okay? Cherry asked. I nodded absently. I'm fine, just trying to figure out how to keep you all safe. I don't want people to know about me. I don't want to take over factions and rule the world or anything. I don't really want to take over this faction. Well, it's not that. But if you have power, you can protect us from the bad things. The magical world is so full of monsters. We need powerful people like you to protect us. Please don't leave us. We need you as our leader. Liam is doing his best, but he doesn't have power. He's just a placeholder. He's doing such a good job of it. And that doesn't have to change, but you have the power to back him up. That is what will keep us safe. I nodded. I was slowly starting to see the bigger picture. How's Kezia? Cherry asked. She's scared. She's still in the veil. She has no idea what is going on or why the Grange wants her. Do you? Well, she comes from my mom's side. Maybe they think since I have witch blood she might too? Can they do something with that? Cherry shrugged. It's so rare. I don't know what people do when they get it. But maybe it can turn them into a witch or something. Or they can use it for spells that only witches can cast. I looked at the shelves. Maybe the answer is in these books? Cherry turned her head sideways as she looked at the hundreds of books. Maybe. Well, I need to protect Kezia. They could have just been using her as a bargaining chip for all I know. Mr. Klein wants me and so does. Well, the darkness, I guess. The darkness. I nodded. It's one of the monsters you were talking about. I thought it was gone, but I was wrong. It's still after me for some reason. Maybe for the blood? Maybe for revenge? I don't know. Cherry leveled a long look at me. Your life is way more complicated than you made it out to be. I thought you were just some boring cashier. That's what you told me. I sighed. I swear. That's all I used. Chapter 105 Visit. I spent the whole afternoon in the study. The books I came across were fascinating, but they were all spells. Nothing that had history or could shed any light on why they wanted Kezia or me. Cherry knocked on my door around 6 with a tray of food. Eat quick. They need you upstairs to do your thing soon. Are Sundays any calmer? She gave me a glance over her shoulder with her eyebrow raised. Don't get your hopes up. I sighed and shoved a chicken wing in my mouth. Before long, Liam followed me up to the second level of the bar into the lair. I sat in a tall armchair with Liam standing tall and ominous behind me. The first of the clients came in. Halfway through the night, I was buzzing with energy and bored out of my mind. Liam had taken a seat in a chair next to me. The most current clients were having a threesome on the couch right in front of me. My hands were laced in there, so I was stuck leaning forward and far too close than I wanted to be. I shot a helpless look over at Liam. He responded with an impassive one. They finished and lay relaxing. I pulled my hands away and sat back in the chair. I felt the need to wash them. I needed to have sanitizing wipes, or something put in here. I always felt so dirty afterward. Even though I wasn't really even doing anything. My hand clasped around a crystal. I pushed so much energy in it. The crystal pulsed, growing hot in my hand. I filled 2 more before I sat back. I heard a tussle outside before someone pushed through the curtain. Liam stood quickly behind me. My eyes shot from Liam to the new person. Kira. Mr. Klein's voice boomed. I rose to my feet. Liam jumped in front of me, shielding Mr. Klein from my view. My fingers latched onto the back of Liam's leather jacket as I peeked around him to see. What are you doing here? I asked. Oh, Kira. Calm down. It was tricky enough getting past all your guards. You really have a nice setup here. He stepped forward. He pointed at the clients on the couch and stuck a thumb over his shoulder. They scurried out behind him. He sat down in the armchair across from mine. How exactly did you get in here? I asked. How did he get in here? I shouted through the curtain. Mr. Klein cackled. A man pushed through the curtain, holding a gun to a little girl's temple. Liam tensed. What do you want? I want you, Kira. Liam growled. You can't have me, I said. Then I'll offer you a trade. Give me Kezia and you can have the girl.
No.
Then the girl dies.
No.
I don't think you understand how a trade works. You're giving me an impossible choice. How about I just kill you and then I don't have to make a choice? Mr. Klein laughed. Very funny, Kira. Like you could kill anyone. Liam stepped forward. Mr. Klein held up his hand. What I mean, Kira, is that if you kill me, many more people will die. I wouldn't come in here without a kill switch. If I don't return unharmed, this whole city will go up in flames. My boss is pretty adamant about getting either you or Kezia. I suggest that you choose. Also, I am sure this little girl would appreciate your help. I could feel my body vibrate with rage. What you ask is an impossible choice. I won't give you anything. He crossed his arms. Then you will have to deal with the consequences. He lifted his fingers to snap them. I grabbed a crystal. Pink strands of magic whipped out of my hand and connected with Mr. Klein's body. I stopped him before he finished his snap. His eye went wide. I wondered how much more I could do. I decided to try and make him speak. Let her go, Mr. Klein said. My mouth moved with his, miming his words without sound. Sir, said the man holding the child. Let her go, I made Mr. Klein repeat. The man released her. Liam snatched the gun out of the man's hand and grabbed the child. Amon Fraser, I called. They appeared through the curtain with guns raised. Beloved, take this girl somewhere safe. I will handle him. I glared at Mr. Klein. Liam passed the girl off, then held his hand in front of me. Allow me, beloved.
No, Liam.
I have to do this. Mr. Klein doesn't think I can do it, which means the darkness doesn't think I can do it. Isn't that right? I released my hold on his voice. Mr. Klein smiled. Kira, you're too soft. My name's not Kira, I said. I stepped forward and pulled energy. I did it fast. I did it without pleasure, like the first time I had done it to him. I felt his energy inside of me, but I also felt his magic. I stole it all. I left him an empty husk. The moan that escaped him was just as empty. He slumped in the chair. He was still alive, but just barely. Take him. Leave him in the parking lot of Grocer Outlet. And what about the fire? Liam asked. Let them try. Send the brothers out. Alert the fire stations of a terrorist threat. We'll be ready. Liam nodded his head. Mr. Klein tried to speak. I stepped forward. I pulled my fist back and clocked him in the face. Just before it hit, I patted it with some magic. His head whipped back. He's all yours. Liam grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the room. I shook my hand. It had been a long time since I punched someone. Felt good. Really good. Liam returned. It will be done, beloved. You aren't going to do it yourself? I do not wish you leave your side. I don't want anything to happen to you. Okay, let's talk to the girl. See if she knows anything. Where did they take her? To your loft. Liam and I climbed the stairs to the apartment. Kezia and the girl were sitting on the couch. Kezia was holding her in her lap while the girl cried. She stroked her long brown hair, speaking soothing words to her. I set my hand on Liam's chest. Why don't you stay here? I'll talk to her. He nodded and stood by the door. I walked around the couches and kneeled on the floor in front of where they sat. Kezia's big eyes landed on me. How did you find her? She was kidnapped like you. Who is she? Amy Lynch. She's my cousin. She's not a Gray? Kezia shook her head. She's my mother's niece. What do they want with us? Does this have something to do with you? I don't know. I'm sorry if it is. I'm doing everything in my power to keep you guys safe. I promise. It's not working. How many more family members are you going to get kidnapped? Why can't you just handle this? Kezia gripped Amy to her as she started crying louder. Her own voice was beginning to waver. I'm sorry. I'm trying. Just give me some time. I'll get this figured out and you can go back to your life like nothing happened. Promise. Okay, Amy? Everything is going to be fine. Kezia glared at me. I backed away from them. This conversation was not helpful. I stormed through the door with Liam on my heels. Chapter 106 Research. I walked the stairs all the way down to the study. Liam finally stopped my march at the bottom of the stairs. Beloved. I brushed his hands off. I need to figure this out. Why did they take Kezia? Why did they take Amy? Liam shook his head. Klein said they wanted you or Kezia. It must have something to do with the witch blood. I shook my head. Kezia is inside the veil. It must have something to do with the gray bloodline. I looked around at the books. What if I can find a spell that has to do with family bloodlines? I scanned the shelves, pulling random books and setting them on the table as I walked. Do you really think this is going to help? He asked. Do you have any other ideas? We should gather all the brothers and attack them. Where? Do you know where their underground base is? We know an entrance at Grocer Outlet. We could attack there. Well, we could, but if we enter through their tunnel entrance, they will pick us off one by one. I've been down there. That's not a good fighting place. Liam grumbled something. I'm sorry. I want to attack them too, but I don't want to risk everyone's lives to do it. Why don't you just use all those crystals then? Blow it up. You have the power. You have the witch blood. I've seen you. It's not that easy. I can't just go blam and take out Grocer Outlet. What would that even do? Kill some people? That won't kill their boss. That won't take out the darkness. So you're just going to sit in here and read books? Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do until I figure something else, or you come up with a better plan. Liam growled and disappeared up the stairs. I slammed a book down on the table. I was feeling just as helpless as he was. I wanted to go in and fight just like him. But the darkness was smart. It always had a plan, and if I didn't understand what it was up to, it would be a slaughter. I shuffled through a bunch of books. The languages and runes rushed through my mind. I focused on just looking for blood at first and then on family relations. There were just so many spells. This would be so much easier if it were digitized. I whipped out my new smartphone and searched. The spells I came across were mostly bullshit made by people pretending to do magic. The spells that looked legitimate didn't need family blood. I continued back with my search through the books. At some point through the night, Cherry joined me. She was just suddenly there at my side, looking over the mass of open books in front of me. Do you really think this is going to help? Do you have a better idea? I think there is a better way of doing this. And how is that? I asked without lifting my eyes from my book. I think you need help. The room filled with people behind me. I looked up. Brothers crammed in. What are we looking for? I scrambled for a piece of paper. I wrote runes and words in several languages. These things. Anything that looks close to this would be helpful. All right. Pass it around. Take a book and pass it on. Let's get everyone we can on this. When you find something, bring it back here. Books disappeared from the shelves. They passed from hand to hand, disappearing upstairs. My heart filled with appreciation of the strength of this brotherhood. I refocused on the book in front of me with renewed effort. It didn't take long before books started coming in. I laid them out in front of me. The spells varied. There were pregnancy spells, summoning your dead relative spells, changing time spells, and bringing someone back for the dead. The biggest question was, which one was the darkness up to? My finger ran over one line in a book. This one here. It takes 6 blood relatives and 10,000 souls. What's that one do? She asked. It's an immortality spell. She shook her head. Not likely. Immortality is a myth. You'd have to be a god to do that. Is the darkness a god? I don't think so. My eyes shifted through more of the books. They all had one thing in common. The need for a blood relation of the person casting the spell or the person they were summoning. So, if not immortality, then the darkness must be summoning a gray. Are they trying to summon my mother? Did she have witch blood? Cherry asked. I nodded. Would she still have that power if they summoned her? It depends. If they summon her as a contract, then no. But if they summon her back from the dead? Cherry shrugged. It's anyone's guess. It's not like I've seen a lot of this stuff done. How do you know so much about it? I asked. Well, my mother was really close to that witch that took over Utah. She had me researching all sorts of stuff for her. I learned a ton, but when things went down, my mom died. I got out of there. The place was a mess, and the faction broke going to war. I'm sorry. She waved her hand. It's not like you had anything to do with it. It's all water under the bridge now. I dipped my head back down to the book. I really hope she couldn't read my mind. Okay, well, it has something to with gray blood. But what about Amy? She doesn't have gray blood, but they wanted to trade for me or Kezia. So was she just a bargaining chip? Cherry nodded as she looked at her own pile of books. The biggest question is, which one? Which spell is she plotting? What has it done in the past? Cherry asked without looking up. It brought my mother and me back from limbo. Before that, my mother tried to sacrifice me for power, and then the last spell I merged. Back from limbo? Isn't that death? Sort of. But it's not the same as this resurrection spell. In this one, it brings you back from complete death. It takes 1,000 souls of power, be performed on an equinox on a major node, and a person of your bloodline. To bring Isabel and me back from limbo, she used Mila and Matei. Isabel. I nodded. That's my mother. And she was a witch? I nodded. She was starting to catch on. There was no use in denying it. That would only make me feel worse. But I killed her. She dead. Well, then maybe the darkness is trying to bring her back. And she needs a gray to do it. My heart sank. I didn't want to have to kill her all over again. It was hard enough the first Chapter 107 battle. The ground vibrated. I lifted my head from my napping place on the books. The ground vibrated again. Shouts issued through the opening of the study door at the top of the stairs. Cherry rose, looking very concerned. What is it? I asked. We're under attack. I jumped to my feet and rushed upstairs. The metal stairs clinked under my short-heeled boots. When I reached the top, brothers and sisters rushed down the halls. Most of them had guns out. I snagged one man's arm. Where's Liam? I asked. Leading the charge. He pulled away and hurried off. I exited the hallway. The bar was in complete chaos. Guns covered the tables. Brothers were checking in and leaving with some of the biggest guns I had ever seen. I slipped between them and upstairs. I laid my hand on the top of the pile of energy crystals I had filled the night before and sucked in their power. I felt tingly and excited. I took a deep breath. I needed to keep a level head. This was a real battle. I came back down the stairs. A female giant held a handgun out to me. Beloved, she said. For you. Thanks. I accepted the handgun. I checked the safety and then put it in the back of my jeans under my shirt. The weight of it pressed against my back. Lanie had been trained to use all sorts of guns, but it still felt a bit unfamiliar. Cole appeared. He held an automatic rifle as he came straight towards me. His normally easy smile on his clean-shaven face seemed forced. Beloved, he said as he stopped in front of me. Cole. I nodded in greeting. I have something for you. We were going to give it to you tonight with a big party, but I think it might come in useful now. He held out a leather jacket in my size with the Arter Brothers crest on the back of it. I accepted it, running my fingers over the embroidery. Wow, thank you. It's from all of us. It has a Kevlar built into it. Normally it's supposed to protect from falls from a bike, but it also comes in handy with light shrapnel. Not a direct hit, though. Okay, I'll be careful. I shrugged the coat on. Fit like it was made for me. Just like all the clothes Cherry had gotten me. Can you take me to Liam? Cole held out his hand. I accepted. He led me through the mass of busy people. This must be the support. Probably things like suppliers and medics, maybe even spotters. I wasn't sure how war worked, but it seemed like they were. We climbed the stairs to the garage. Corrugated metal covered the normally open garage doors. I saw they were reinforced with steel. Men stood at the windows and the doors with their guns poking through. Gunfire filled the air. I fought the urge to cover my ears. Liam was in the center of the garage, standing at a table. 4 orcs stood around him. I recognized Granite and Jamie immediately. They must be his captains. They were looking down at a map that had pieces of popcorn all over it. He was pointing and speaking, but I couldn't hear what he was saying over the gunfire. They looked up when I approached. Beloved, you shouldn't be up here, Jamie said. Cole, take her back down. Protect her, Liam ordered. I shook my head. Please. I'm responsible for this mess. Let me help.
No, beloved.
I am. I didn't take Klein back. You didn't? Where is he? In another safe house. Why? Liam balled his fists. He knows things. The Grange was going to attack whether we gave him back or not. Once you rejected their deal, this was inevitable. I frowned. Okay, I see your point. But let me help. Fine. Go upstairs. Maybe you can do something from the balcony. I nodded and rushed away. I kind of felt like he was just getting me out of the way, but that was fine. I had no experience in actual battles. Maybe from the balcony I could pick people off or something. Cole caught up with me. I am sure Liam sent him to protect me. I reached the loft. Kezia and Amy cowered behind the kitchen counter in the corner. The lights were off, but the sunlight poured through the windows. I crept closer to the large floor-length windows. Several brothers and sisters were out on the balcony with rifles. Clear shots rang out. More came from overhead in the bedroom windows. I crouched low and joined them on the patio. They nodded as I joined them. I nodded back. I took a quick look over the balcony before I ducked back down. It was an army made up of all sorts of creatures. They were blasting bullets and bits of magic at the building. Fires raged on the lawn. Screams and shouts issued in between gunfire. Bodies littered the ground. My stomach flipped, followed by a round of nausea. This was war. This was what it looked like, and I was sitting here in the middle of it. Hell, I was the leader of it. They were after me, and everyone else here was trying to keep that from happening. Are you okay, beloved? Cole asked. I nodded my head, trying to will myself to be. People were dying. My people were going to die if I didn't do something quick. I couldn't just give myself or Kezia up. That would just bring worse things. Isabel would be back, and if she took over all the factions in the Northwest, we wouldn't be any better off. I'd seen her in power before. Reveal, I commanded. The night sword appeared in my hand. I sliced open my right hand and began drawing on the cement of the balcony. The brothers and sisters around me gave me suspicious, almost scared looks, but they kept popping over and shooting when the opportunity arose. Cole squatted down at the edge of the doorway and watched me. I drew a big circle in blood, then added the runes. This circle was made up of many circles and lines. When I finished, I sent energy into it. The gunfire stopped. No one's guns worked. What's going on? Asked one woman as she checked her rifle. There's nothing wrong with the gun. I just stopped the ability for things to go through the air. Her frightened eyes turned to me. Why would you do that? So we don't get hurt. We're safe behind these walls. But now we have no way to kill them. I kept my eyes down on the circle. Yes, we do. I drew on that inner energy inside of me. I wasn't going to let the Grange or the darkness take out my people. I pushed the inner energy out to my fingertips. My pink magic wings flared to life. They fluttered, and I rose above them. Cole reached for me, but I flew out of his hold. Down below, eyes turned to me. Eyes of the enemy. In the very back, I spotted Mila. Her ice blue eyes followed my ascent above her people. The crowd below tried to fire or hurl magic at me, but nothing left their hands. Mila stepped through. The crowd parted for her. I see you've learned a few new tricks. I stayed above the crowd. Why don't you join us? As you can see, we are the bigger faction. We have more power than your little brotherhood. You protect empaths and mathematicians, powerless orcs, and null part humans. Do you really expect to win this battle? I didn't bother answering her. I knew she was just baiting me. I whispered my command. Both swords slid down my arms and into my hands. They flared to their full size. The Aurora sword glinted in the sunlight, gleaming with white fire, while the Night sword absorbed all the light around it with its inky clouds. Oh, you want to fight? No problem. My followers will die for me. In the end, you will be mine. I flew in a spiral down at her. She vanished in a cloud of dark smoke. Her soldiers sprang towards me but were cut by my spiral of blades. My feet hit the ground. I hacked and slashed, letting the swords take control. They were living extensions of me, but even more than that, they had their own souls. They took the lead. They killed. I was their weapon. Screams rose as my swords cut through them. I realized that others had joined the battle. The garage doors were open. Brothers and sisters in leather jackets fought along with me as we cut through the army of claws and fangs. Together we were united against an enemy line. I was finally a part of them. Chapter 108. Aftermath. The battle surged on through the afternoon until the last of the enemies fell. I stood breathing hard. My swords held in my hands, looking for the next attacker. Blood soaked the pavement and the grass around the bar. I was soaked in it. Everyone around me was soaked in it. Bodies covered every inch of what used to be the parking lot. I realized we had one. My wings flickered out. The light of the swords died as they shrank to their dagger forms. I slipped them up my arms with a whisper where they nestled as tattoos on my forearms. I looked around at the Ardor brothers. They looked exhausted, but worried glances looked at me. I had frightened them just as I had Liam. I hung my head. I had probably made the wrong call. I started towards the road. Beloved. A brother called. I turned to see Jamie holding his side with dark blood oozing out of it. Where are you going? I don't know. You can't kill their leader today. You need to recharge, another brother said. A strong arm held my shoulder from behind me. I looked up to find Liam standing there in the afternoon sun. His face was covered with cuts. "We need you. You can't disappear on us now." I nodded. He steered me back inside and down the stairs. The bar looked like a hospital. Brothers were laid out on the table with bandages and blood. Cherry and others ran around, tending to people's wounds. I went straight to Jamie where he had just sat. I held out my hand and pushed magic into to mend the slash on his side. His dark eyes looked at me with gratefulness and a little fear. "Thank you, beloved. I don't know how we would have gotten through this day." I frowned. Probably wouldn't have even happened if I wasn't around. I wasn't going to say that, though. That would feel like they had fought for nothing. I just kissed him on the forehead and moved on. I worked my way through the serious wounds as fast as I could. I pulled energy from healthier people nearby, and after 2 hours, everyone was exhausted but alive. "Has anyone seen Kezia or Amy? Are they okay?" I asked. "Let me go check for you," one man said. I think it was Enid, but he was moving too fast for me to see clearly. I sat heavily in a booth on the main floor. In a blur, Enid was back at my side. "They are just fine, beloved. Safe and sound." "Thanks." I held my hand out and he took it. I pulled some energy from him. He sighed with pleasure. I could feel his fast-paced energy vibrating inside of me, but my body was too tired to do anything with it. "Do you know where Liam went?" I asked him. Enid pointed to the bar where the tall orc was looking angry while talking to Cole. I pulled myself up and closed the distance. "That is unacceptable," Liam said. Cole's eyes moved past him and settled on me. Liam turned to look at me. His face was angry but softened with worry when he saw me. I looked up into his eyes. He still had an air of terror in his eyes when he looked at me. I gave him a tight smile. "We're all tired. I am sure that whatever you are fighting about can be handled later." Liam's expression soured. "Liam is only concerned about you," Cole said. Liam spun on him. "You shouldn't have let her do that. She could have died." Cole smiled. "Talk to her about it. I didn't have much of a choice in the matter. I'm sure you understand that." He walked off. Cole, Liam growled. "Yes, you should talk to me about that. I wouldn't have listened even if Cole had the chance to try and stop me. I wouldn't have listened even if you tried to stop me." Liam spun on me. "You could have died. We all could have died. They have more powers than us. I have more power than them. They could have won. They didn't. We did. They're dead." "They?" Liam started. I held up my hand. "You're tired. We can't change what happened or the choices I made. We're alive. Let's be thankful for that. If we're going to worry about anything, we need to think about what Mila is going to do next." "Mila? You said she was dead." I dropped my eyes. "The darkness is wearing her like a suit. I think she's in charge of the Grange, and she wants me." My outer shell was beginning to break. I had been so strong up to this point, but the exhaustion was getting to me. The thought of my dead friend had just sent me over the edge. I think Liam read something in my expression. He grabbed my shoulders and steered me up the stairs away from the rest of the Brotherhood. "You need to be strong in front of them, especially now," he growled in my ear as we climbed the stairs. I could feel tears trickling down my cheeks. I wiped at them with my bloodied sleeve of the leather jacket. Came away even dirtier. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get a grip." He walked me all the way to my bedroom door. "Get cleaned up. I'll come back for you." I nodded and closed the door behind me. I felt like collapsing on my bed, but I needed to keep pushing. I stripped off my clothes and showered. The hot water ran red for a long time. The same words came to my lips that always did when I was at my breaking point. "Remy, Remy, Remy." The dark shadows coalesced in front of me. The figure solidified in front of me. I couldn't believe it. It was really him. I just stared at him. "It's been a long time," his smoky voice echoed in the shower. I choked on words. I stumbled forward and wrapped my arms around him. I buried my face into his leather jacket next to his neck. He smelled the same campfire smoke smell he always had. His arms tightened around me. I realized I was naked and wet, but I pushed that aside. I didn't care right now. He was here. He was really here. I finally found words, but they came out small and weak. "What am I doing?" He chuckled. "That's a good question. You just took on the army led by the darkness and won. I'd say whatever you're doing a pretty good job." I pushed back away from him. "Wait, but the darkness holds your contract. How are you here right now?" "You summoned me. It hasn't worked before. The darkness is a little distracted right now." He leaned forward and whispered in my ear. "I took my chances. How do I buy your contract? How do I get you away from her? He shook his head. I don't think you can. She likes to torment you way too much. I think you'll have to kill her and then lay claim to my contract. How do I kill an entity? Is she a person? Does she want to resurrect my mother? What does she need Kezia for and me? Remy shook his head. I can't answer those questions for you. I wish I could. I'm only here to see you. I just wanted to hold you a little bit while I got the chance. If I say anything, it will violate my contract more. She could destroy me.
No.
Don't tell me then. I'll figure it out. I'll kill her. Don't worry. I will get you back. You and Angie. Remy chuckled. Angie. I'm sure he's just fine. Karma is way better than Mila. Trust me. He'll be fine. He dipped his head to mine. I'm more worried about you. You're not making a lot of smart decisions. What was that battle all about? You can't take on an army of 250 and win like that. I think I just did. He sniffed a laugh. Yeah, I guess you did. He pulled a strand of wet hair back from my face. You really are. He stopped and pressed his lips to mine. The sweet taste of him overwhelmed my senses. I wrapped my fingers in his hair and pulled him closer to me. I missed him so much. I wanted to savor every moment I had with him. His hand roamed my naked skin down my sides as he wrapped me tightly in his embrace. His tongue slipped over mine as his kiss grew deeper. He pulled back. His hazel eyes gleamed but flooded with sadness. I'm sorry. I have to go. If I wait any longer. I nodded quickly. I don't want you to go, but I don't want to lose you completely. Kira, don't hesitate. What? He looked down at his hands for a moment, then back up to my face. Just remember I'm already dead. What I do now, I do for you to keep living. Remy. He cut my question off with one more long kiss, then disintegrated into shadows. He left me alone in the shower once